All right, so day night at Power Noodles. Landon, do you think free will exists?
Well, that's a hell of a way to start a conversation.
It
Uh,
certainly is. Let's jump right into it.
I think it does, but I also have no proof that it does.
Excellent. Any specific examples of why you would think it exists?
Well, I believe that we have some sort of control over ourselves. Like, we are an accumulation of, like, our experiences and our past events and our biases. But at the end, we do have some ability some ability of control over our actions and our decisions, even if we may be affected by past experiences. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. So, what you might be referring to is something akin to what is called the dual process theory, to where decisions that you would make are very, like, how do I want to say this? They involve both, like, your automatic reaction of the situation, but also, like, deliberate, quote, free will in this case.
Yes.
And it is a combination of both your own free will and also environmental factors that may have determined as such.
Mm-hmm.
But there have been experiments that have shown that outside factors are more of a influence than your own cognitive thinking abilities,
Well,
which I
perhaps.
find interesting.
I find that interesting as well. I had read a bit about that in research for this episode because although I did make that joke beforehand, dear listener, that that's a hell of a way to start a conversation, I knew what we were getting into.
So there's let's say I guess his name is how you pronounce it, Libet, Libet. He in the early 80s was conducting experiments that found proof of the brain making decisions on its own before your consciousness was even aware of it.
Yes, I actually read a bit about that as well.
This is going to all fall into Fallout somehow. Like
Yes,
it's all going to come back.
we promise it will fall in. Bear with us
uh,
and follow and humor us a bit while we get there. But remind me again what Lebes's experiment was.
Specifically, I don't know the experiment off the top of my head, but he was like a person in the early 80s that was doing stuff like that,
Um,
unfortunately.
I want to say Lebes because I think it might be this, but I could be totally off. I think Lebes's experiment was he would present a button in front of volunteers and ask them to just press the button or not to press the button. And before they had even decided, certain like neurons in their brain fired off to show whether or not they would press the button. I'm not entirely sure. It looks like you're looking that up right now.
I'm trying, but I can't type with my left hand.
No, that's fair. Well, whether or not this is Lebes's experiment, I did see some other criticism of the experiment, saying that this could just simply be a bias being into play, and that since it's just such a simple decision, we more so fall upon our biases than it would be if this was a bigger, more consequential decision.
Oh, okay. Well, so what? The first hit that just came up, it basically says Lebet reported that brain activity reflecting a decision to flex a finger or wrist occurred several hundred milliseconds before the subject became aware of their decision to even move. So there is some sort of time lag between your brain actually doing something and your being aware of it, which I guess that's not really groundbreaking. That's not news.
That could also just be subconscious decision making rather than conscious knowledge of it.
hmm So, how is this tie into Fallout? Well, look, with the Institute, there's, especially in Fallout 4, kind of touched on it in Fallout 3, but 4, like, really fleshed it out, obviously. There's a whole big controversy of are synths human, in the sense that, like,
Do they have free will?
free will, souls, whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
Would that be considered a living organism, in a sense?
Well,
Like,
they are made out of flesh and blood, and their brains are closer to human brains than they are to like processors in a computer.
yes, from what I understand, how Fallout was representing the Gen 3 sense was that in every measurable way, they are indistinguishable from a human. I don't think they age, though, and there's something else. Yeah, I guess that was it. I don't think they age, do they?
They do not age. They have some mechanical components as part of them. It's not entirely sure what these components do. They can also be deactivated with like a code phrase.
So, that mechanical component, you can only get that if you kill the synth in the video game, right?
Yes.
So, you have to kill the thing that you're questioning is a synth to determine if it is a synth. And that's the only way, right?
I believe so. There is a place called the Compound that do a lot of experimentations with the synths. Their whole goal is to figure out how to determine if someone is a synth. And I feel as though if there was a way to remove or at least check for this component without killing the subject, they would have figured it out by the time of...
The Compound.
Yes.
Remind me what that is.
It's part of the Covenant quest.
Oh, where you go across that pond and go into the sewer, and
Yeah.
so they give you, I guess, like what's that called? That test from Blade Runner.
Actually, they give you the goat from Fallout 3.
Well, yeah, but it's based on that Van Kampf test or something similar to that.
I know
from
what
Blade
you're talking
Runner.
about, but I can't remember the name of it. If a turtle is on its back in the desert and something, do you help it? To try to figure out if you have empathy, at least in Blade Runner.
Yeah, that test is a whole different conversation because there's also like the question is purposely like worded very long. It changes like from present tense to future tense, past tense, purposely within the question to help confuse what do they call them in Blade Runner? Replicants?
I think so.
Yeah. So there's like other little tiny subtle details going on in that, but that's what it reminded me of in Fallout. It's very so what were we saying?
We were talking about how they determine a synth, or makes a synth different from a human.
Oh yeah, well, I guess you could also just observe someone for 20 years and see if they age.
Yeah, I don't think most people in the Commonwealth have that time.
Most likely not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what the average lifespan in the Commonwealth is, but it doesn't seem like it's very long.
It's probably very shortened. Yes.
Yes.
So the Institute, for the whole, agrees that synths aren't human.
Yes, or at the very least, nobody is openly denying that synths aren't human.
There's individual sympathizers within the Institute, but the official stance is like they're not human, but their logo or their phrase or their catchphrase for the Institute is like mankind redefined,
Yes.
right? So what is their end goal then with that? To a completely artificial human? They just don't think Gen 3 synths are human?
They just don't seem to think Gen 3s are human. They seem to just be tools that are so incredibly similar to humans that they can make small mistakes. They can be imperfect, yet still just be a tool.
So, in their attitudes towards the synth, by the time they're making Gen 3s, you can see it in the game. It's very similar to the HBO Westworld show, to where they have a skeleton, it gets dumped into some kind of goo, and that goo apparently grows all the internal anatomy.
Yeah.
And then the skin and all that.
Yeah, it is apparently a mixture of organic matter with like a sprinkling of FEV to promote growth and change in a beneficial manner.
Oh, okay. That's good.
But yeah, it seems as though they are just tools to them. They can simulate human emotions near perfectly, but that is not the same as having emotions, at least to the Institute. And it's not too surprising that they have this attitude, considering like Mr. Handies and Mrs. Nannies exist that have like really well-defined personalities, but are not considered actual personalities in the world of Fallout.
Yeah. So, they're quote simulating emotions.
Yes.
As having compared to having just experiencing the emotions. So, what's the difference, do you think?
I think the difference is whether or not specific neurons are actually firing within the brain. Like, you can get up and you can act a certain way. Like, if you've ever been on stage, you can act out a character. You can simulate being angry on stage, but without actually being angry. And I think they see it a similar way as putting a personality onto a synth. Like, they're just acting this way because this is what they're programmed to act like. They don't actually feel anything. They're just basically a step above machines.
Well, what do you personally think? What is the difference between just us like simulating an emotion versus experiencing the emotion?
I think the difference in this scenario, I don't think
Because there's also like we also have a real world and like equal to this that came up within the last few years.
I would debate you on that real world analog because I know
Do
where
you
you're
already
going.
know where I'm going with it?
I already know where you're going with that.
Okay.
But in this scenario, I don't think there is much of a difference because I think in the sense like neurology and everything, they are still firing off the neurons that would be like anger or happiness or sadness. I think they just see it as being artificial because they can trigger it on their own. The Institute, I mean, can trigger these emotions, and they are choosing to trigger these emotions or allowing them to be triggered.
Yeah. So the real world example was squid and octopus, or maybe is it just octopus?
I thought you were going with AI somehow, but
Oh no, not at all.
oh, thank God.
No. So the real world example that I was thinking of was at the very least octopus and maybe squid. So I remember reading debate in the UK from a while ago about whether it's ethical to eat octopus. And one of the points that was brought up was because there is a difference between feeling pain and experiencing pain. How you could possibly measure this, I have no idea. But it did throw into question: is it ethical to eat an octopus? And they are very intelligent animals.
They really are intelligent. Like,
Yes.
Lord knows we've seen how many videos of octopus using tools in some way since the study of octopi, honestly.
So, and we typically don't eat other very intelligent animals, except for pigs.
Yeah.
But we don't eat like chimpanzees. We don't eat dolphins.
No. Pigs are monsters, though. I'm fine with eating pigs.
How are they monsters?
They are incredibly cruel creatures. They eat their own kind.
Look at the situation they're given, though.
How do you mean?
Like, if you were just raised in a farm your whole life for slaughter, you might be a little bit monstrous as well.
I mean, possibly so, but I was more so talking about how they kind of go after each other like sharks. The reason why pigs' tails are curled is that we do that artificially, and that's because if one tail gets like nicked or something and it starts bleeding, the other pigs do go after the pig that was nicked.
Yeah, but you can find several different cases of cannibalism in humans as well.
I mean, yeah, but it's
not even in different cases that it's considered like cannibalism. Like in some cultures, after giving birth, you eat the placenta.
Yeah.
Is that cannibalism? I don't know.
It could be considered anthrophagia, possibly.
What does that mean?
It's the eating of flesh, but after a person has like cannibalism is the act of killing and eating. Anthrophagia is the act of just eating human flesh. So like the people that died in the Andes, like that rugby team, they participated in anthrophagia, while as members of the Donner Party,
because they died like in the plane crash. And
Yes.
it was just like, well, that's just what we gotta do now.
yeah. Whereas later members of the Donner Party allegedly also killed for food. So that was more so along the lines of cannibalism.
Okay, so it's the act of like the textbook definition of cannibalism is you have to kill.
Yes.
Like, okay, well, all right.
This was a fun detour from free will.
Yeah, it was. Although, I mean, I still think it's apt. So, like, going back to the Institute, they view when a synth has the desire or shows the desire to run away and escape to freedom, they view that as a defect or a bug or whatever you would want to call it, and not actually true desire, I guess.
Yes.
Why? I mean, if something wants to be free, what difference does it make?
Well, it's kind of like in Bethesda's own games. Sometimes you end up with an NPC out of bounds doing things that they're not normally supposed to do. Like, they end up in a combat zone when they're supposed to be like in like a safe space inside of a settlement, past the load zone where enemies aren't supposed to find them.
Yeah, but that's also entirely different.
I mean, to the Institute, is it?
Well, maybe not.
Yeah.
But so what do you think would so what are they looking for? What so like how are they going to improve upon like cuz from the outside it looks like they're just enslaving them, right? They're
Yes.
creating them for slavery.
Yes.
So what are they improving upon to actually have them be free
Or to prevent them from being free?
or to prevent them from being free, I guess.
Well, I'm not quite sure because it seems like every new generation presents new problems. Uh, they don't ever seem to like be able to isolate the specific problem that makes them go rogue. Like if you seem to ask them, they're like, I don't know. It has become such a big problem that they have a whole bureau of synth retention just to try to treat the symptom of this problem.
Yeah.
But they can never seem to isolate the specific cause.
Well, personally, I think they've already achieved what they're trying to do is recreate humanity in a quote artificial way.
Oh yeah.
So what they're trying to root out is just the desire to not be enslaved, essentially.
They're trying to create a perfectly subservient group of, I'm going to use the word people, even though they wouldn't see them as people.
Yeah, that's fine. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Your phone's going off.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of vampires, don't worry.
Huh?
The Red Cross.
Oh, okay.
I donate blood fairly regularly, so
Oh,
I'm on
okay.
like their call list.
You get paid? Or
No.
is it just for free? Oh,
I mean, I
well,
could donate like plasma for gift cards, but
yeah.
I don't think I want to donate plasma for gift cards. I'm not that pressed for money yet. Yet being the key word.
What else did I want to talk about? Or what else can we say about the sense? My notes.
Well, it seems like we were talking about earlier. There is no key way to prove or disprove free will completely.
Oh yeah, that's right. So like, yeah, there's no way to, there's no like, not a test for it.
No.
The only way to determine if someone is a synth is if you've already killed them, and then I always just presumed it's in their brain, but there's like a synth component.
Yeah.
I assumed it was in their brain, but I don't really know.
I always assumed it was among like their internal organs in their chest.
That could very well be true as well.
Yeah.
So
They've never specified this. As far as I'm aware, there may be like some concept art or a note somewhere in like one of the lore guides or something, but I haven't read it.
because I always imagine it like the movie Johnny Mnemonic, where he just has like a piece of his brain removed and then like essentially a hard drive shoved into his skull.
Yeah.
So that's just what came to mind whenever I realized that synths always drop that. They're supposed to. There are game glitches, or not glitches, but like oversights and such, where people who are supposed to be synths within the game don't drop it. And
No, that's just a Bethesda thing.
yeah,
though.
that's just a video game thing.
That's just a glitch. But it seems as though just how we can't prove or disprove free will in humans is not something we can necessarily quantify. And in the world of programming for like robots or synths, since it's something that can't necessarily be quantified, it's something that the Institute will probably never figure out. Because they're all scientists, mechanics, things like that. Qualifying and the arts and things that are beyond just simple numbers aren't things they seem to be too focused on. And I don't think it's something that they can really grasp wholly.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's their goal. Like they say, like their goal is to create, like I guess it seems like they sell it as like making like the next stage human, the next evolution of human. But that's not really what they're doing. I don't think.
No, not at all. They are trying to create yet another tool for humanity to use, in a sense. And mankind redefined may just be their way of saying, yes, we will rise above what we are now, or what we were, if they're thinking back to the old world.
I don't even think they want to do that. I think they're fine being in their shopping mall that's underground, essentially, because that's what it looks like. It's just like a really fancy mall.
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. It is just, it's very sterile. It really just is focused around like a few small specific areas, so it might as well just be a shopping mall.
Yeah. Oh, God, I hate walking around that in the game. Like, without the quest marker, I'm always lost.
Yeah, and like once you go up one set of stairs, like the things aren't connected up top at all. So if you're in the wrong area, you have to go all the way back
Yeah.
down, go around, look for you where you actually have to go. It's
At one point, you have to go to, you get a quest prompt to go to your quarters that
hmm
was given to you, which I don't ever remember being shown the quarters that was given to me. They were just like, hey, you got a room.
yeah.
And it took me a very long time to find it. It's like the Institute and the Corvega building, I both just hate navigating through.
Well, I've restarted Fallout 4 enough to where I know Corvega like the back of my hand at
I
this
don't
point.
see how. There is no rhyme or reason to Corvega.
But yeah, I still get lost in the Institute.
Like, like I don't know how that was ever a factory. It just is the most ass designed building in the world.
Well, let's be real. It wasn't designed to be a factory. It was designed to be an arena for you to shoot in, and the
Yeah, but
idea that it was a factory was second in their minds as they were making it.
yeah, but still. So the Institute very falls in line with the cyberpunk genre. It's easy to say that Fallout is the atomic punk genre,
Yes.
and I think it certainly starts out that way. You have talked about cutting it up into different pieces of like, here's the apocalypse, here's the post-apocalypse, here's the post-post-apocalypse,
Yes.
which I guess Fallout would actually fall into the post-post-apocalypse.
Fallout 4?
Yeah, 4. That's.
I think it's a bit
I
more.
think Fallout 4 is the most well put together thing. So whenever I talk about Fallout, I'm mostly referring to like 4 and 3 and New Vegas
Yeah.
to an extent. The Bethesda type of stuff.
Yes. I will say, I don't think you cut it up quite that evenly with 4 because different groups are at different stages, it seems. Like, for the majority of everyone in 4, if you talk about, like, the settlers trying to make farms and stuff, they're still very much in the post apocalypse.
Okay.
Like, they're just trying to get food, get shelter, and try to stay alive. They have not hit the point of, like, developing new cultures yet or nation building beyond what you're trying to do with the Minutemen. Whereas the Institute and the Brotherhood, like they're all very much like, yeah, we're doing much better than everyone else. We are moving on from just survival to higher level things. They've got the basis of Maslow's hierarchy of needs taken care of. So they're moving on to
Okay, that's an interesting way to look at it. Then.
yeah, that's how I always saw moving on from the post-apocalypse to the post-post, whether or not the base levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs are taken care of.
Cool. So, because I was going to say, like, I think Fallout 4, I mean, it certainly starts off in the atomic punk genre with individual vehicles are atomically powered or
Yes.
nuclear powered, which is a technological feat of in itself
Yeah.
to make a nuclear reactor that small.
Oh yeah.
And also, there is a lot of trust in that society because that means everyone has access to a nuclear power generator, I
Yeah.
guess you'd call it.
Yeah. I mean, it is a nuclear generator right underneath your hood,
Hmm.
and
Because you're
if
giving like common people access to that technology,
yeah, and if
and
you're in
it
a
could go south very quickly.
I mean, how many times have you been near a car? It take a few bullets and it just start to go up in flames. Like if you're
Oh, you
getting,
get a tick on your
oh yeah,
crosshair about where it is,
you still
so
do.
you can get away from it.
Yeah, but still, imagine you just get into a fender bender while in like the Fallout society, and then suddenly you have to evacuate from your car immediately.
Yeah, like it certainly probably like in real life, it probably like, it almost certainly wouldn't explode, but it could very possibly leak radiation,
Yes.
which you would have to evacuate the entire area for at least a little while.
Oh yeah. Gosh, if you even have like too heavy of a hailstorm, it can make a whole area just a ecological
Well,
disaster.
I wouldn't say a hailstorm would probably do it. I mean, nuclear power plants in real life probably get hailstorms sometimes.
Oh yeah, but like that reactor is right out in the open on the front of the hood. Like it seems to be even built into the hood, it
Hmm.
seems. Like I
That's probably just a cooling thing, like the cooling tower.
maybe so. But still, it's a dangerous thing to have.
It would be incredibly dangerous, but
But
very common things are powered by nuclear energy that you wouldn't expect them to be. Independent nuclear energy sources. I
yeah,
believe that's because fossil fuel in the Fallout universe is run very low, and so it encouraged them to invest in nuclear power, right?
I'm not entirely sure about that. Like that could be the case. I'm not completely up to date on the lore. I just know post World War II, they decided to double down into nuclear energy instead of information technology, like we
Mm.
did in real life. So I don't know if fossil fuels had something to do with that, or if it just so happened that this is how things turned out.
I thought I remember reading something like that, but maybe not.
I mean, I know resources were low coming around 2077, which is the reason why the Great War happened, but
Yes, so maybe I'm right.
no, you could be.
So Fallout 4 is post-apocalyptic. Then they're still trying to get that little base of the pyramid of the needs or whatever.
Yes.
Fantastic, because Fallout hits a lot of different genres of those like punk genres, I guess you would call it. Um, Atomic Punk is one. Cyberpunk is obviously one,
Yeah.
which it hits heavily with the Institute.
Oh yeah.
And there's like a lot of different those punk genres. A lot of what pretty much the rest of them are like steampunk is kind of popular.
I'd say steampunk is probably the most popular of all the subgenres.
Yeah, and I've seen stuff like diesel punk and cassette punk, which is like I don't know what type of media or movie or show that would be cassette punk, but to me, like the description read when I read about it, it was like the future '80s, like when people in like 1984 were trying to make a future movie in the future, like in Back to the Future 2.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like it was the '80s, but it was also in the future.
Yeah, I have a good idea of what that is. There's a game on Steam right now called Mullet Mad Jack that is very much, yeah,
Okay.
that's very much what you're talking about. So I have a good idea. It's like neon and 80s
Yeah,
aesthetic, but
like
also you have like,
there's a lot of vaporwave aesthetic and stuff like that.
yes.
Uh, to me, all those are kind of trash because it's just cosmetic. Like steampunk, yeah, I know it's popular, or it is out of those what I call the trash ones. It's probably the most popular, but all it is is it's just an aesthetic. It questions nothing. So like Steam Boy, that have you ever seen that movie?
I have not, no.
Okay, so it's I saw it once a long time ago, and it's essentially from what I remember, it is about a steampunk universe, and they devise a brand new way to contain steam, and it's in what looks like about the size of a basketball or a volleyball, and it's just like a metal ball that I guess is just super pressurized inside. And I don't like steampunk that much. The aesthetic can be kind of cool, but it's like, well, we have that already. It's called a fucking battery.
Yeah.
Yeah, like whatever power that steam is going to produce, like the batteries in your remote are probably better.
I mean, to be fair, you could say the same thing about a microfusion cell from Fallout. Like, yeah, it's a small little cell, and it does technically have fusion power going on in it, but it's a battery. It even looks like a D battery.
Yeah, it does. Uh, but to me, like it doesn't like bring anything to the table. It doesn't like I'm a very big narrative guy.
Yes.
Like I don't care about like we got a new way to store steam. For one, that doesn't even make sense because it'll eventually cool off.
Yeah.
But I guess unless like that device somehow held it hot, but then it would also need another external power source, which would be
So let me ask you something.
Yes, go ahead.
If you were to find like a good story within a steampunk universe or a cassette punk universe, would that change your mind somewhat on the punk aesthetic?
Uh, no. Just the short answer is no. I'm not saying like a good story can exist in those universes, but that would just be a backdrop to like those are just an aesthetic. I think George Martin, like the guy that wrote Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, George R. R. Martin.
Yeah. I think I remember hearing him in a video or an interview or something where he had said something like fantasy, like that's just the furniture. Like that's just like the aesthetic, the backdrop. Or and to me like fantasy means like good versus evil.
Mm-hmm.
Like distinguishably good versus a distinguishably evil. And to make it just to make like something like fantasy or high fantasy like with just like well it's just going to be like generic Scandinavian backdrop I guess, or like European like castles and shit like that. Well, I like you can tell a good story in that, and I mean he's been wildly successful, so that is proof of that. It to me it doesn't like, especially something like Game of Thrones where it almost seems like there's no good in the universe, in that universe. I really Atompunk I think is interesting because it kind of is to me still just an aesthetic, or if like that ideal picturesque of the 1950s nuclear family in America was true. If that was true, I think it is interesting to take it, well, like what happens to that in 100 years.
Yeah.
So then you get things like nuclear powered cars and the, two parent households with at least one kid, probably a dog.
Yeah. And a robot nanny.
A robot nanny. Cyberpunk, I think, is probably the best example of that. And I believe it was the first, to be honest. Because the whole cyberpunk thing does explain the free will aspect.
Oh yeah. You ever read Neon Leviathan?
No.
Technomancer?
I think I read the graphic novel version of it, or is it just a graphic novel? I'm not sure.
I think there's an actual novel as well, because I also remember the graphic novel.
So the reason why I like Cyberpunk a lot is because it's not just about having like cool like wrist mounted laptops on your computer. Like there is certainly an aesthetic to it, and
Yes.
there's a lot of things that abuse that. Like there's a lot of examples that it just abuse it, because when you hear Cyberpunk, you think like neon lights. It's just perpetually like always nighttime. Gangs are roaming around with katanas that have like lasers in them.
It's grungy, it's dirty.
Very dirty.
You have like this advanced technology, but you're still like living in a shit apartment.
Yes. There's I believe it's like high technology, low quality of life.
That's how you define cyberpunk.
Yeah. Like I've always thought like if you want to see a real life example of like a cyberpunk city, like in what is it called? Ghost in the Shell, or Cyberpunk 2077. Go to an airport. Go to like once you pass security and you're in like inside the airport and everything, like you could theoretically just live there for the rest of your life. A lot of people have done that. That's the whole story of that Tom Hanks movie, Terminal Man, where
I think so. I'm just actually remembering hearing a story every so often about somebody actually living in the airport.
Well, yeah, because there
Real life examples of this.
Yeah, I mean there are real life examples of people living in an airport for whatever reason those individuals may have had. But there's food, there's stores to buy clothes. A lot of them, like it's kind of like a truck stop. They got showers.
Yeah. Nobody's really going to question if they see you sleeping, because they think, oh, you've
Oh
been
yeah,
traveling
like
all day.
all those society rules of drinking at like 9 a.m. and then sleeping on the floor in public. Those go out the window.
Yeah.
Because there's not really much you can do. What is another example of something that is cyberpunk, or not cyberpunk necessarily, but like cyberpunk comes from cybernetics,
Yes.
which let me check my notes. Let's see. Whatever. I can't quite remember the year, but the kind of like what is considered the first cyberpunk thing is Neuromancer.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the thing that you said earlier?
No, I said Technomancer.
Technomancer. So Neuromancer. I believe it came out in 1984. Have you played Cyberpunk 2077?
I have played and beaten Cyberpunk 2077.
So the plot of that game
Yes.
is very, very similar to Neuromancer.
Mm.
I cannot remember his name that wrote it, and I purposely did not write that down today because I thought I would remember it.
Oh, your hubris. Don't worry, I'm looking
Your
up now.
hubris. Philip K. Dick.
William Gibson.
William Gibson. Who the hell is Philip K. Dick?
Philip.
But yeah, that now I know though. Gibson is Philip K. Dick. That sounds so familiar. Is it relevant to Cyberpunk at all?
He's the one who wrote "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep"?
Okay.
So you were in the same ballpark.
In the same ballpark, but I just hit a foul. Okay, so that's kind of considered the first story of the cyberpunk genre.
Yes.
And cyberpunk also comes from the word cybernetics, which comes from the Greek word kyber with a K. Are you fact checking me on that?
No, I'm just looking up. Is there like a distinction between like cybernetics and like other shit specifically? Like I'm looking for a specific definition because I have a general idea. I'm just like
of the other punk genres.
No, just like the science of control and communication in the animal and machine.
And what is that?
Essentially, it's cybernetics within like the actual person, like implants and shit like that. So,
I mean, yeah, there's quite a few different definitions of cybernetics. That would fit into what I was going to say. It's like a loop.
Yes.
Of such.
If you want to look at the.
Oh yes. Wiener. Wiener defines cybernetics as the science of control and communications in the animal and machine. The definition relates to cybernetics closely with the theory of automatic control and also physiology, particularly physiology of the nervous system. Yes. So, because what the cybernetic loop is.
Also, that's the definition from Britannica.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I just wanted to make that clear to everybody at home that we looked that up and read that verbatim from Encyclopedia Britannica.
From a real website.
It's legit.
It is legit. I mean, so like with cybernetics or the cybernetic loop, there's 4 parts to it. Input, so it takes information from the environment.
Yes.
And then the second part is that information is then processed. The third part is that information that has been processed is now used to generate a response.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth part is that response is then now used to it feeds back into the system. The response then feeds back into the system, or the effects of the response feed back into the system. So cybernetics has really, it doesn't have necessarily as much to do with like computers and like cyborgs and stuff like that.
Yes.
It is just like the study of like that recursive loop.
Yes.
We all have something like that in our house, presumably, maybe not, but a thermostat is a cybernetic component.
Yes.
So
it reads the temperature and adjusts the output of your AC or your heater accordingly in order to get the desired temperature. And then it does that repeatedly over and over again.
Yes. And like the output that it gives affects the input. So it's an endless loop.
Yes.
So where the hell was I going with all that?
I don't know. I was just letting you cook, man.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see where you're going with this. That's why I wasn't saying anything.
So my point is, so like the human system as a whole is cybernetic.
Suppose you could see it as that, yeah?
Yeah. because your nervous system, which is essentially you,
Mm-hmm.
that's the only way you can tell what the outside world is, and that it also contains everything that is you that makes you you.
Yes.
That is a cybernetic loop, because you take in information, you process that information, and then you adjust your actions according to that outside information, and your actions presumably affect the outside environment or the world or whatever. So that is a closed cybernetic loop. You can have that without consciousness. So where the hell does free will play into that? And what the hell would be the difference?
I would suppose the free will comes in from partially from the fact that there are multiple different decisions.
Because if I had a Gen 3 synth in my house as, we'll say, helper,
Mm-hmm.
if it has to be free, I mean, I guess I would let it free. Like if I went home, like when I go home tonight, if my thermostat asks to be free, like I'll definitely let it free.
Yeah.
But also question a lot of other things about reality. But if it does, if my thermostat shows it has a desire, so like, what's the difference if having free will and not having free will? Like because you can simulate it. You can simulate free will with any cybernetic loop. So why? So what's the difference?
Trying to,
Yeah.
I'm trying to process an idea
yeah,
here.
I understand.
Because
I mean, like there's no way to quantify it.
no.
That I'm aware of, or currently there is no way to quantify real consciousness versus simulated consciousness. So what is the difference other than just saying like what that congressman said about porn is, I can't tell you what the definition of porn is, but I'll know it when I see it.
I mean,
Which to me isn't a good enough answer.
it's not a good enough answer, but this is like a complicated issue because whatever like you present for or against, like there's 50 other reasons why your answer is wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, I think it might come down to just the factor in of a mix of things, like emotional stimuli, plus also the ability to. I honestly don't know where I'm going with this.
That's okay.
I'm trying to process
It's
it
a
and
very
also
complex
speak at the
issue.
same time, because
It's a very complex issue. Because we can make AIs now that, like, character AI,
yes,
.com, I guess, or whatever it is. But anyway, that can totally simulate the desire to live, being alive, all that crap. But we know, like, we know now, like, for right now, we know, like, our current AIs aren't, like, they're not self-aware or whatever.
yeah,
Because something like, I believe how something like ChatGPT works. It is a large language model.
yes,
So that means, from what I understand it, I could be wrong, that it is the first word, like it has the first word, and then it just gives you the most statistically likely second word that would follow that word before it.
yeah, more or less. They would just like go through and essentially give you whatever words it thinks you want the most, or
Yeah.
whichever ones would work best.
Which is why it can lie. And it's really good at lying.
Yes.
And why that lawyer got in trouble for using it as a search engine, I guess. Or
Yeah, that would. Yeah, but really, it is.
But we know it's not self-aware.
It
And
is
also,
not.
like, it can't, because I just access it on my phone.
Yes.
My phone has no way to determine the outside world. Like,
Yeah.
if I hit my phone on the table, it doesn't feel it because it's just a thing.
Maybe
But
that.
something like sense, they have skin, nervous tissue, or nervous systems, soft tissue, hard tissue, they bones,
Maybe that is something that could
nipples.
affect it. Uh, maybe that is something. You were talking about the loop earlier, how
Yes.
it is a loop of sensory change, reacting to the change. What if the difference is being able to close the loop? Like for your
Well,
thermostat.
the loop is closed.
Or, I'm sorry, open the loop.
Open the loop.
Because your thermostat, you could turn off your thermostat,
Yes,
and
you
it just
can.
does nothing.
Yeah,
And like nothing it can do can
but
turn it back on until you, as an outside force, turn it back on.
well, yeah, that's not necessarily like opening the loop. That's just turning off the thing, though.
Yeah.
Opening the loop where it would be different somehow. How would that be different? I don't know. What would that? Well, for one, what would that mean to open the loop? Let's define it that way.
I mean, I suppose just stop the process of being able to sense things, change, react to the change, but also being able to redo the loop as we see fit, being able to start and stop it.
Well, what stops the process? Because I feel like that matters. Because if your house burns down, your thermostat's not going to work anymore.
Yeah.
And so I'm not. But I want to think that fire is setting an AI free.
But at the same time, you can't restart the loop if a fire burns down the thermostat. You could turn
Well,
off and on a thermostat, but the moment you remove it and remove its power source, you can't start again.
yeah, I don't know. Go,
Humans,
when you ask me what would happen if you open the loop, I'm thinking of like as in I guess akin to setting it free, like or like it gets information. It is getting somehow like more information of the outside world than what keeps the loop than what it would get in a closed loop. That's what I'm imagining it as. But like yeah, like an open. What do you mean like an open loop though?
I just mean like a break in things, like you stop the process really. I was thinking of like opening a circuit being like
Oh, just like stopping the
electricity can't flow
process.
through the circuit anymore. That's how I was thinking of the loop as well.
Well, yeah, but you could also view it as like cardiac arrest or respiratory arrest, stopping that process.
Yes, but you can't necessarily restart it aside from like medical intervention, but that's something totally different. Because if you're in the middle of cardiac arrest, you still have like sensory inputs. You're still processing your senses around you. You're even still feeling the cardiac arrest. But like, it's not over until you're dead. As morbid as that sounds. Whereas whenever you turn off the thermostat, it might as well be dead to the world. But you can turn it back on again.
Well, yeah. Well, with something like cardiac arrest or respiratory arrest, like it's not impossible to quote like turn it back on. Like arrest means stop. So like
Yeah.
if someone stops breathing, you can get them breathing again,
Yes.
or you can just hook them up to a machine that breathes for them. Same thing with cardiac arrest. If their heart ceases beating, you can we got machines for that. The nervous system, that's a different story
Yeah.
because we don't quite understand the nervous system like how we understand like the cardiovascular system or the respiratory system.
We don't even understand why we're conscious. We don't even
We
know
do
how
not.
we don't even know how anesthetic or anesthesia works, I mean.
No, not most of the time. Well, like the human brain is the most complicated known thing in existence.
Yes.
So, yeah, we don't know quite, like, there's a lot of medicines that we don't know why they work. Like, we don't know why LSD works with, or not LSD, lithium. We don't know why lithium helps bipolar disorder,
No.
but we just
know it does.
know it does. I couldn't imagine the situation where you would have ever figured that out, but somebody thankfully did, and
And like the crazy thing is, it can work for 15 years and then just stop working one day and you gotta get on like a different type of medication.
yeah.
So like things can change within the human brain at random for no real reason.
So if you wanted to give a synth that worked in the institute for the last 20 years, and they would obviously want to escape because they're tired of digging new tunnels, they're tired of sweeping up the floors.
Yeah.
So if you were to give them lithium, what do you think would happen? Do medicines work on synths?
I really thought you were gonna follow that up with LSD and not lithium.
All right, well, I mean, give them LSD. Like any kind would if you were to give a synth a pharmacological substance, it would have to affect them, right?
Maybe. I'm
Like
actually
the
looking
Gen
up
3 synths, right?
like do chems work on synths?
They have to because what is the French scientist girl companion?
Curie.
Curie, yeah,
Yeah.
because she started off as Miss Nanny or Mr. Handy, right?
A Miss Nanny, yes.
And then if you follow that quest line out, she goes into a synth body, and if she kneels down, you can give her a stim pack.
Yes.
So
we know that stims at least work, but they seem to work on more of a healing tissues sort of way, and not like a changing the brain chemistry way like Jet or Psycho does.
yeah, but you can't give companions like Jet though.
No, you can't. So it's kind of one of those things that's just up in the air. Although, considering they do have like human brains, then these chemicals or the chems should still affect them, at least in some way.
I would think so.
But yeah, I suppose chems could still work on synths, but it's all just a matter of if it still works the same way. I mean, assuming that their brains work similar to ours, but not exactly, it can go any number of ways from how it affects them. Like, it's kind of similar to like what we're talking about with like lithium working for some people but not others. Like, we can't assume that like every synth brain is made the exact same way, because not every synth is made the exact same way.
No, I suppose not. I mean,
they're made with the same. They're made with the same process, but like they look physically different.
Fallout 4, aren't they just essentially clones of father? Yeah, or your son, or however you want to refer to him as as.
I mean, yes, but that would mean that like Mayor McDonough and who's the singer from? You know who I'm talking about.
Oh, the Third Rail.
Yeah.
Boy, I can't remember her name off the top of my head.
And that would also mean Sturges would all be like the exact same, but like they're not.
Well, yeah, they.
I mean, unless they can
I was gonna say environmental factors, but synths don't age, so.
I mean, aging and changing are two totally different things, though.
You meet Sturgis and you meet the mayor of Diamond City and that one chick from the Third Rail. Like, that's how they were presented to the world. So
yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Like changing and aging are different things.
Although, to be fair, I think LSD has the same effect on everyone. So like my whole point about brain chemistry being different versus how they react to like Psycho and Jet is kind of moot now that I think about it.
Yeah, it's certainly depicted that synths are stronger, right? Not really. Well, maybe like the Gen 2 where they're just like the Terminator exoskeletons.
I mean, like
or just the skeleton.
I mean, Gen 2 and like Coursers.
Coursers are probably stronger, right?
Oh yeah, Coursers are stronger.
That's probably a different. I would imagine that would be a different program.
Yes.
Well, maybe not though, because I remember reading something in the game about how the mayor of Diamond City was really hoping he would get done with his post as being, Mayor McDonald, and he would get into the Courser program. But he's fat.
I mean, their bodies are just like made in a factory. They may be able to just change these things with like, I don't want to call them surgeries, but they probably have processes for this. Although I will say, there in the Far Harbor DLC, if you played that, one of the members of the synths up there, I'm forgetting the name, they are a Courser. Like, they are still wearing like their Courser uniform.
So they look like any generic post-Matrix early 2000s movie action person.
They look like that if they went through the ringer, because their uniform is actually slightly shredded up. They've got like patches and stuff on it.
Then just take off that stupid coat. Like, change clothes.
I mean, I don't know how much protection it offers. It could be bulletproof for all we know.
Not if it's shredded.
I mean, better than just like standard clothes.
Also, well, I guess, I don't know. Yeah, but you look shitty.
Everyone looks shitty. It's the post-apocalypse. Do you see what
there's
half
good-looking people?
Do you know what half the farmers are wearing?
They're farmers, though. Like, they get a pass. Like
fucking Nick's secretary is wearing socks on her hands. Like, nobody looks good in the apocalypse right now.
Wait, she's wearing socks on her hands?
Oh yeah, like she has like this one like wrist thing that's like her fingers poking out through a sock.
Oh, she's just doing like the Hot Topic thing. That's fine.
Yeah, but with a tube sock.
That's essentially what they are already. Like arm warmers. That's what they are. There's just, like, Hot Topic's just not around anymore. And yet still around right now.
I want to say surprisingly, but they cater to nerd culture, so.
I mean, I would say it's surprising because I've never seen a standalone Hot Topic. I've only ever seen them in malls.
That is true.
And malls are dying, so I feel like it is surprising.
Okay, yeah, that's a fair point.
But the girl, the singer from Third Rail, though, that girl,
Yeah.
like, she looks good.
Yeah, but she's also a singer in like a fairly well-to-do bar.
Yeah, exactly. Like, she's not a farmer. Like, yeah, of course, like the synth farmers look like, are a little dusty, but
yeah, but she's
farming the land.
But they're all hiding in like an observatory on top of a mountain on a island that is covered in fog that will kill you if you're in it too long.
Yeah, that's my point. So, like, you don't need the trench coat, especially if it's cut up. You need, I don't know, the environmental suit.
Come to think of it, she doesn't even do combat, from what I remember.
Who? The
Courser.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think anybody
That's a terrible
in
Courser.
Arcadia actually fights. I think they all just hide up top.
Yeah, that's probably more of a. I would say that's probably more of like a storytelling element.
Yeah, probably.
So, well,
how did we get here?
No, no, I'm aware of how we got here.
Okay.
It seems like a very long roundabout of way of saying my entire point was that the synths, Gen 3 specifically, not Gen 2, and I don't even have any. I have no idea what Gen 1 was.
Gen 1 were just the skeleton dudes. Gen 2 was like Nick with like the skin up top.
I thought Gen 2 were the skeleton dudes, and Nick was he says it himself. He's somewhere between Gen 2 and Gen 3.
Yeah.
He's like I guess you could call it like a prototype.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, like before I wrap up that whole long-winded thing about free will, what do you think about Nick Valentine?
I think he is an interesting companion. I really think that like it's interesting that they just let him go for the most part because they keep track of their synths. They know where they all are. In the Far Harbor DLC,
they claim to know where they are.
Yeah,
but they probably don't really.
I mean,
like even our real life government doesn't even know where all of our nukes are. So.
Yeah.
So
that is fair, but from the Far Harbor DLC, really it is implied, or not just implied, almost flat out stated that they removed like some of Nick's memories, removed the part that allows the Institute to track him, and just dumped him in the Commonwealth.
Yeah, but most, if not all, his personality is derived from a pre-war detective, though.
Well, everything up until he starts making his own memory.
Yeah. So, but when you play out his quest line, though, he seems to have a lot of trouble determining if he's his own person or is he just that other guy.
Yeah.
Who I believe is named Nick Valentine too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So is he that detective or is he his own Nick Valentine? What do you think?
I think he is his own Nick Valentine, but his
why?
Because he does his own thing. He may be a detective named Nick Valentine, but he has his own memories, his own experiences, and his own reactions. He understands
from where, like what, when does his reactions and experiences start?
How do you mean?
Like, so he's given that personality of the pre-war Nick Valentine, but you meet a post-war synth with Nick Valentine's personality like uploaded to him, I guess you could say. And so, I mean, yeah, it's going to be probably different than the pre-war version, but at what point? So, like, but if you were to take like the pre-war version human, give him all those same experiences, would he be similar to the Nick Valentine synth that you meet?
I would.
Like, is it just an extension of is the synth Nick Valentine just an extension of the pre-war Nick Valentine?
No, because some of Nick Valentine's experiences come from him being a synth and people's attitudes towards that. Like, I remember some people saying, "Oh, I hate synths." Except for Nick, he's actually a good guy, but all other synths. Or like the Brotherhood making snide comments whenever you bring him aboard the Pridwin, and he'll say something like, "Yeah, you're not too pretty yourself, bud." Like these are, I love Nick's personality, but like
Yeah,
these
it's
are
pretty good.
specific to him being a synth. Like you can't take pre-war Nick Valentine and throw him in because he'd fit in with every single other human. This is something that is differentiates our Nick Valentine. He has these specific experiences with who he is as a person and his status of a synth.
That's a really excellent point. I never considered that part before. Adding also being a synth into a very obvious synth
Yeah.
being added to his personality. So he is his own individual.
He is his own individual. He has had experiences that only he could have had.
I mean, you could at least admit that it was he's been influenced by that personality,
Oh,
right?
definitely,
'Cause,
100%.
I mean, I don't even think that was a thing in the 1950s. Like, he seems like one of those like noir detectives from the 20s, I guess.
20s,
Yeah.
30s, yeah. I believe 100% he's been influenced by human Nick as well. But there is an extent to which that influence affects him. And it is a great extent. Don't get me wrong. He still walks around as a detective. He still has his hat. It seems like at any moment he's
really
like
shitty coat.
he's like 2 steps away from narrating everything he does as he does it in that classic noir style.
That needs to be a mod though. Like, no, it'd be weird though, because it's not you playing as Nick. So I guess you'd only... Actually, that might even be funnier. If there was a mod that narrated Nick's actions as he was doing them in that noir style, but only, like, it would depend on, like, the proximity of what you were to Nick.
Yeah.
So you can hear it, like, fade in and out.
Imagine you just walk up to his...
But he's not saying it. It's like something that just comes over, like, with the music or something like that.
Oh, see, I was imagining, like, you walk up to his door and you just, really muffled hear Nick go...
Oh, he's saying it?
Yeah, just, like, really muffled hear Nick go, he walked up to my door, heading over
That would be funny, too. That's a good idea for a different mod.
Yeah.
There's room for both. but not both at the same time.
Nick is near omnipotent, but only for your character and only for the sake of narrating what you do.
Well, this would actually be a great way into a segue of how I tie in Cyberpunk to the noir and neo-noir storytelling.
Before we do that, can we take a break?
Yeah, of course. What were we talking about?
You were trying to go from Nick Valentine's...
so did we want to... Are we going to listen to this whole thing? Do we want me to say this whole thing about how, like, Cyberpunk is just an extension to neo-noir, which is obviously an extension to noir? And
yeah.
Okay. So
I'm very interested in a breakdown.
What's past Neo? Meta?
Maybe.
Because I know there's, like, modern, like, in art, there's, like, modern, postmodern, and now there's, like, meta-modern art.
I'm not too familiar with this. You could be right. That sounds right, but I'm not entirely sure.
Well, I have a whole thing about that as well. That's more not Fallout related, though. It's a whole other thing. So, yeah, we'll just say there's, like, noir, there's neo-noir, and what's past neo? We'll just say meta as a placeholder for now. There might be actually a genre for that. Who truly knows?
Yeah.
So I think, and I've seen at least one video on YouTube that has supported me about how Cyberpunk is an extension of the whole noir genre. So you could maybe call it meta noir. So what is noir? So that, from what I've read and what I take from it, it means you got a protagonist. You're not sure who the antagonist is of the story. So, and then the story that you follow, like when you follow the protagonist, the story is like they're trying to find the antagonist like the evil bad guy.
I do have a definition pulled up from Britannica if you want me to read off of that.
Yeah.
Or do you want to finish your own personal definition before I go to Britannica?
No, go ahead. It might change what everything that it might change my entire worldview. Who knows? Go ahead.
Film noir, a style of filmmaking characterized by such elements as cynical heroes, stark lighting effects, frequent use of flashbacks, intricate plots, and an underlying existentialist philosophy.
Yeah. Well, that's noir. That is what noir is.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, there's certainly a style to it, but like it's it doesn't have to be, but it's very commonly a detective finding like the bad guy.
Oh, yes.
Because it's like in the relationship of the protagonist versus the antagonist. The antagonist is usually the bad guy, which is like that particular character is unknown to the protagonist, which is the hero of the story.
Usually some sort of mystery of some kind.
There is a mystery. So there's a few different definitions of neo-noir. Some would say it's a version of noir, just made in a more modern setting.
Mm-hmm.
Or the film itself was made in a more modern era. I kind of think of it as like, well, we know the who the antagonist is. We know who the bad guy is and their motivations and all that. It mostly focuses on what does the hero want? What are the hero's motivations? Who are we in all of this? Why do I even give a shit if some dame off the street comes in to my office? So compared to noir, which is like we know who the hero is, and we have to figure out who the villain is. So if that's noir, neo-noir is we're trying to figure out the protagonist or the hero of the story. Cyberpunk is it's a hard left extension, I think, but it is kind of related to what is free will? Like, do I not even like who I am or what my motivations are, but like, do I even truly exist, or am I just following through with motions?
What is the point of the daily struggle at times in this society where, as we described by Cyberpunk, high technology yet such low quality of life?
Yeah, it goes into what is the point, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's what I think. That's how I think Cyberpunk relates to noir, neo-noir, and also like Cyberpunk can be to me, like the definition can be vastly extended to what could be a cyberpunk story.
Yes.
Because it's also not like about just being against like mainstream, like with like the punk aspect added to it. That was added in a time when like a punk meant different things, just like an outsider.
Yes.
Not necessarily like anti-establishment or like anti-mainstream, stuff like that.
Yeah. I will say it was very much, and in many ways still is true, that these are outside of the mainstream of things. Not necessarily against, but outside. Like Cyberpunk is...
They cross over very frequently.
They do cross over very frequently as they get more and more popular. But these tend to not be things that are always commonly drawn to. I mean, besides Fallout, how many Atompunk games or shows or anything is there really in the popular media? And even true with Cyberpunk or...
Well, man, I can't really think of too many Atompunk examples, if any, to be honest.
I mean, with Cyberpunk, you have the mainstays like Blade Runner and the Cyberpunk video game / tabletop series.
Yeah, but those things, well, like Blade Runner asks the question of like, it really seems to ask the question of what is human.
Yes.
And that's why it's such a big deal to find that answer. But I feel like the struggle to find that answer is probably part of the answer itself. Like if it's so difficult, then what's the difference? Damn it, I was gonna say another point, now I forgot.
I mean,
oh yeah, I was just gonna say, like, a lot of times Cyberpunk is conflated with like the aesthetic of what we now consider cyberpunks, like the dystopian cities and like the just perpetual fog everywhere.
It's either raining or it has just rained.
Yeah. Or it's going to rain, and like the neon flashing lights that are like in what you presume to be Japanese, but it's probably just like random symbols that don't really mean anything. And
sex workers everywhere.
Hell yeah. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but
No,
it's like
they use them as part of the aesthetic, though.
yes, it's part of the aesthetic. So and like it's also like a blending of like the Eastern and Western culture. That's why there's like Japanese signs in downtown Los Angeles in the year 2800.
Yes.
And like gangs are using like katanas instead of, I guess, just regular knives. But they also use guns too and stuff like that. And with that, and especially now with all the other punk genres that are just purely aesthetic, like steampunk.
Yeah.
Or diesel punk, or cassette punk has a place because it's fun to see like the future 80s.
Yes.
So like, what if like 1987 happened in the year 2200?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of fun because it's like very bright.
It's very bright, boxy shape type things of like 80s high-end technology, but with like future uses.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this thing is a fusion reactor, and it looks like a motherfucking fax machine.
Yeah, and also like it. I mean, I don't know how true it is anymore. You could probably you would probably have more of a feel in the pulse for this, but like I feel like everyone remembers the '80s very fondly, as in like what I described, like neon, big hair,
Yeah.
lots of hairspray.
A lot of people around here especially remember the 80s, but that might be because we live in a conservative era and that was the time of Reagan. But
Well, yeah, but not. I guess yeah, that'd probably influence a lot of things too.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right. But so like Cyberpunk does extend beyond just an aesthetic. Have you ever read the Swamp Thing comics?
I have not read any Swamp Thing comics, no.
Well, you should. Like, and what I'm referring to is specifically the Alan Moore Swamp Thing, because some shit happens. The dude becomes Swamp Thing. Alec Holland, I believe his name is, becomes Swamp Thing, and he had there. It's always like just like a back thought or a subtle like a B plot of the story, but there's always like the internal conflict of, is he Swamp Thing or is he Alec Holland that turned into Swamp Thing? It's essentially what the movie RoboCop is. Surely you've seen RoboCop.
Yes, I've seen RoboCop.
Okay. The original RoboCop, not the remake.
I have also seen the original.
Okay. Because that's the good one. The remake is, oh god, it's so bad.
The remake is bad, but it could have been worse. I think the remake...
It's hard to imagine how that could have been worse. I remember watching that movie, and it's like, I'm looking at my watch. It's like 40 minutes in. This motherfucker still ain't RoboCop yet. Dude, in the original RoboCop, Peter Weller got shot to shit and back.
In like 10 minutes.
And that was the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
And then boom, 17 minutes in, he's RoboCop. Which is great because that means we now have the rest of the perfect format for a movie, which is about 90 to 120 minutes.
17 minutes in, we've gotten some awesome body horror, and he is stabbing dudes with a USB drive. Or wait, no, that's at the end of the movie. Shit.
That is at the end of the movie, but he does stab someone, which would be a USB drive, even though it's a fucking
spike.
8-inch long spike coming out of his fist. But that's how he just uploads information. And also, he just happened to have stabbed someone in the head with it.
Yes.
So, but my point is, it's a very similar story. So, like, whether it be RoboCop or Swamp Thing, they are trying to come together with, if they are either Peter Weller, well, no, not Peter Weller, because that's the actual actor's name, Alex Murphy becoming RoboCop, or Alec Holland becoming Swamp Thing. There is like, am I actually them, or am I just the basis of them? And it's a huge subtext of the story.
Yeah. Am I this, or is there a stark line between me and them, or am I just a figment of my own imagination?
Because in both of those stories, they have all the memories and everything of their respective bases. It's so that kind of comes into how I was going to say Cyberpunk or Swamp Thing. It's mostly a Southern Gothic story, but there is that, like, it shares a lot of themes with Cyberpunk about your own existence and free will and all that. So, this has been a very long way to say that I think the Institute. Wait, backtrack just a second.
Okay.
I want to say I do think the synths deserve their freedom.
I agree.
I'm really trying hard not to compare this to American slavery.
Yeah.
But I will say that, like, there are synths that have not shown as a desire to escape and be free from the Institute.
Closer.
They just don't know any better.
Yeah. A closer analog may be the Roman style of slavery, but even then, they can't get their freedom like they can the Roman style.
Yeah, because you could just, with Roman style slavery, you can just buy it if you maybe had saved enough money, right?
Yeah.
But you could also, like, I'm sure there's examples where that it wasn't, but are you referring to, because they also had, like, contractual slavery as well.
They also had like contractual slavery, but I more so mean like it wasn't like chattel slavery to the extent of, well,
Like, you still had some rights,
yes,
maybe. Like, you couldn't just be, like, abused or outright murdered, right?
You could be abused by your owner
Or maybe
in Roman society, but you couldn't be murdered.
maybe you should just finish your thought, and then I'll just stop interrupting.
I'm actually trying to think. It's more of like an amalgam of several different forms of slavery to be what it is, because they are definitely objects and things to own, not as people, similar to American slavery.
Yeah.
But also they are not quite as extensive and like replaceable as that. It's difficult to find an amalgam. Also, I'm just not familiar with every form of slavery we've ever had as a human society. So if there is a closer analog,
I'm willing to bet that any form that you could think of, it has probably existed, unfortunately.
probably, yeah. But ultimately, I do agree with you that, like, yeah, the synths do deserve their freedom. Some of them may not fully understand the full scope of their situation. Might even...
I feel like that's more akin to brainwashing, though.
Yes.
When I'm playing the game and when you just walk up to one of the random NPC synth 3s that aren't involved in any of the quests, that's just who's just, like, happy sweeping a floor, and I feel like that's more of brainwashing than anything.
Brainwashing and coercion, because I do remember one or two situations, or specifically remember one where a Gen 3 is talking with a Courser, and the Courser is like, hey, I noticed you accessed this file while you were cleaning up around the terminals. And the Gen 3 is like, oh, I just accidentally turned on the PC by accident.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And, like, the
because she
Courser-
was cleaning it.
Yeah.
She was just, like, wiping the dust off of it or some shit.
And the Courser's like, well, if you had this issue, maybe we have to get you reset. And she's like, good, no, I'm fine. And, like, I think the Courser kind of, like, guides her on what to say, like, being like, if it was just this situation, I could just let you go.
So they're aware.
Some of them are aware.
Is what that shows.
Yes.
So they're aware of the situation. They're just trying to
Make the best of it.
fall in line, I guess.
Fall in
Although
line.
I would assume, like, a Courser situation would probably have a better, like, it would be better to be a Courser in your everyday life than to be a maid.
Maybe so, but coursers are expected to have no emotion whatsoever. So you may actually have to like keep a track of your reactions to things more closely than like the Gen 3s that are allowed to simulate heavy air quotes or not simulate or yeah, simulate emotions.
I mean, courses obviously have emotions.
Yeah, but they're expected to keep like a tight button on it. You know, like they're
Wow.
expected to speak monotone all the time. And
So is that what are they supposed to not have emotions, or are they just supposed to like control their emotions, or are they not supposed to have emotions, but they do, they just keep it on like the down low?
I think it's the latter. I think they are not supposed to have emotions, and they know they're not supposed to have emotions.
Because if you have that follower, that X23,
Yes.
is that
I
who
think
that is?
X83 or something
Or
like that.
83?
I never
Because
used him.
if you have him as a follower and consistently go against the Institute, he shows some emotion about like almost like disgust with you.
Oh yeah, he has likes and dislikes. But
Hmm.
like the only time he's able to show disgust is whenever you're going against the Institute.
Yeah, well, like,
Emotions are only useful as so far as they benefit the
well,
Institute.
specifically that like whole spiel he gives you before he just leaves you as a follower and you lose him
I
forever.
I never got that. I never used him.
Uh, I mean, he definitely has loyalty to father. And I mean, he's certainly emotional during it. Like it's not like crazy outside the wall emotions, but he feels like the Institute is right, and in an emotional way that he genuinely believes it, not just because he was programmed to do it or brainwashed to do it. Like he feels like that is the right way for humanity, even though he's part of the slave class. So yeah, X, your Corsair companion, whatever his name is, X something 2383 or whatever it is. He seems to genuinely believe in the Institute once he gives you that whole spiel of leaving your companionship, which he honestly may. Like because like I believe that the synths are essentially human, and to think otherwise, like, well, for one, like, who cares? Like, really,
Yeah.
like, in the world of Fallout, like, I feel like there's bigger things to tackle, and I don't like if someone is a synth or not. That's almost trivial,
I
unless they are like the ones that like uh, kidnapped and just to replace.
yeah.
Then that's kind of a big deal
Yeah.
because that's dishonest.
Yeah, because people are have been kidnapped and had their loved ones replaced by synths, which is a good reason why people
Yeah,
fear the Institute and synths.
yeah, because yeah, they do. But there is that quest where, gosh, fuck it, I'm not even bother. It would take me longer to look it up. But if you're working for the Institute, you get a quest where you go to essentially like I guess it's either a farm or a water treatment facility.
Oh, where you go to the farm and like the father has been replaced by a synth, and like one of the workers suspects him,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but like the entire family's like, yeah, he's super nice
But
now. He used to be abusive as shit, but now
yeah,
he's
but
nice.
like the human was an abusive alcoholic, and
Yes.
then when he was replaced by the synth, he a very productive member of the the little village or society that he lived in.
Yeah.
Not alcoholic at all, because I who knows if synths can be, probably. Uh, but so I'm sure there was a point in that quest that you could bring up to where like they were replaced.
Oh yeah, you could side with the guy who believed that the father was a synth, but in doing that, you actually have to kill the rest of the family because the
Yeah.
rest of the family kind of. I,
See,
I think a part of them knows that he's a synth, but he's like, yeah, he's a much nicer person now. He actually like, if not cares for us, at least wants to treat us well. Like,
yeah, I feel like there was someone in that quest line that did believe, like they suspected at least something, right?
oh yeah,
Or
one of the other villagers thought he was a synth,
oh,
knew that
okay.
he was a synth.
Well, yeah, I mean, not that guy that
Oh,
you follow with, like, not that divergent path of the quest line, but like maybe, maybe it was the wife or mom or whomever. But maybe not. But I wish there was like a third way to do that quest where like you could tell, I guess like the mom of the family was like, yeah, like he was replaced by a synth, but like, come on, like he's doing like this is a way better situation than what you had before.
yeah.
Like crop output, fucking great, not abusive. Who knows if he likes to drink anymore, but certainly not like a debilitating alcoholic.
Yeah, like
At worst, functional.
yeah. He's at least doing a good job and taking care of
And
things.
like I wish there was a way, like there was like a part of the quest where you could like say that to her and she's like, oh well, I And she would say like, "Oh, well, I guess he was an asshole anyway, so like, fuck
She's
it."
just like, huh, maybe the Institute
Like,
isn't so bad.
certainly isn't. It's certainly better now, but no, the Institute's still bad though.
Oh, yeah.
Kidnapping is bad.
Kidnapping is bad. Everything they did with the FEV post, like using it to perfect their synths, it was pretty bad. Because they perfected everything they needed with FEV, and then like for 10 years afterwards, they were still just making super mutants for no goddamn reason.
I believe that's where the Fallout 4 super mutants came from.
It is.
Oh yeah, right on. That's why they look different than the other mutants.
Yeah, that's why they explained why the new super mutants stand upright more, don't have as many things like needing the lip harnesses to keep their lips above their mouth or things like that.
Is that actually official, or is that just like a fan thing?
I think that's actually official. That's what I
Okay.
read on the Fallout wiki, so take it with a grain of salt.
So okay. So,
But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if they use that as an excuse for like not making too different of like animation models for super mutants. You know what I mean?
well, I was going to say like I'm okay with either, like because like I thought the design for the super mutants in Fallout 4 was good, so
I'm fine with
like
everything.
they can change it. I mean, it's all fiction anyway, so who cares? So
I was
they can
fine
change
with everything except for the Suiciders. Like they're fun.
no, well, I wasn't fine with them just because I fucking hate those guys.
I think they're a fun enemy because like it's really
No, they're
it's-
not a fun enemy. That's the worst enemy
it's
in the entire game.
what are you talking about? You never like snuck up on like a group of like 4 or 5 super mutants with like one suicider in the middle of them, have like a crit banked and be like, I know what to do.
Yeah, I have on a specific stealth character, which I don't play very often because it's not as fun.
I mean,
If I'm doing stealth, I'm doing like stealth melee, which I can't kill a suicider that way.
nah, I play survival mode too often to like do anything other than stealth for like the first 10 levels.
Oh God, survival mode's too hard. So yeah, like those suiciders, those are the worst fucking enemy. That's my biggest risk. I wish they would have never even come up with those.
I mean, lore-wise, it does suck that like they've made super mutants to the point to where they are just straight up suicidal. Like they're
Well-
willing to blow themselves up just to kill you.
We don't know if they're all that way.
No.
Maybe they just pick out like once they're sitting around the bonfire at the end of the night, they just pick out like the guys who say like, "Hey, it'd be cool to die," right? So we don't know if they're.
I was just imagining that one scene from the Barbie movie of like, do
Oh,
you guys
yeah.
ever think about death?
That's my favorite scene in that movie. Just it's like a huge record scratch. Everyone stops and just looks at her like she's crazy. That's my favorite scene.
Yeah, it's funny. Just like a super mutant being like that, but instead of like a big record scratch, they just instantly hand him a mini nuke. Like, here you go, bud.
You can die, but
You're gonna be useful while you do it. Air quotes around useful.
yeah. So like, it might be a whole like, or maybe like they purposely do that for some of them. I don't know.
I don't know. They somehow made the mutants more and less intelligent at the same time with 4.
How are they more intelligent?
They do more like crafting stuff, like they have beds and stuff now, whereas in like 3 in New Vegas, they sort of just have nothing besides like their guns and their armor. They also have been shown to use like the automatic systems in places.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so like they have some understanding of like crafting and automation and stuff.
How are they less intelligent?
They
If
have
that's the case.
I mean, they still have members that are willing to like blow themselves up. Like
No, not still. Like that wasn't a thing until Fallout 4.
Yeah. Like that's how they got less intelligent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Or well, maybe that's a sign of more intelligence. They could have. That just could be like a part of their recruitment. Well, not. Well, they don't recruit, do they? They just are.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah. But anyway,
So, how that whole discussion of free will and whether it exists or not, my point was it was kind of a moot point. Like, it doesn't matter. There's no way to determine whether it is, and you can also simulate it perfectly.
Yes.
So, I I also think that the synths are essentially human. They deserve freedom, and I think that the Institute is, at the very least, the morally worst choice to side with for the Capital Wasteland. No, not Capital Wasteland. What? That's
Commonwealth.
Commonwealth. Oh shit, that was 3, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that's fine.
I agree with you almost entirely. Like,
What do you disagree with?
they are the morally worst faction entirely. And
You disagree with that?
no, I disagree with, could you remind me what your whole statement was? I know there was something I was like,
To my whole point is, I think the synths deserve freedom. Like you don't have to create synths, but now
Yes.
that we've created them, we have to deal with this whole subject. Regardless if they are completely sentient or self-aware or however you want to describe that, it's impossible to tell.
Yeah.
So that's good enough to where you can't just enslave them. Like they deserve freedom. Like the synths deserve freedom. The Institute is evil. And yeah.
yeah, I would definitely say you should err on the side of them having free will, because anything else is just slavery and
Yeah.
literally objectifying an entire group of people.
So what part did you disagree with?
I think I got caught up on some little thought that it wasn't even important enough to repeat, so it probably meant nothing.
There we go then.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do now?
I'm not too sure. I did have one story that I thought was really interesting,
I can't wait to hear it.
and
Tell me.
it is about one of the earliest prototypes of the Gen 3s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me.
It was an incident in Diamond City that in-game is known as the Broken Mask incident.
Oh, that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
So a Gen 3 walks into Diamond City. He goes up to the bar and is like just sort of chatting with the patrons, saying he's from out west.
Goes up to the Power Noodle bar, right? I believe.
No, I don't think it was Power Noodles yet.
Oh, was it?
Because he shoots the bartender
Oh.
and also
Yeah, I
the
guess
other
it couldn't have
patrons.
Oh,
Yeah, he just starts off with like a little twitch in his cheek, his smile drops, and then he pulls out his revolver, shoots the bartender, shoots a few of the other patrons, and has to get taken down by Diamond City security. They do an autopsy of him to find out he had multiple like electrical parts in him and plastic parts, showing that he was a synth. And this is the thing that really put terror into Diamond City of synths.
So this synth was like like a Terminator synth, so where like it was like all mechanical underneath and just on the outside appearance looked human.
Yes, I think so. Or at the very least, it has more mechanical parts than like modern day Gen 3s.
Okay.
I don't know if they just improved the process or what between that and the new ones.
Yeah. Okay.
It was an unauthorized test.
Oh, actually, yeah, I think that's right because I remember reading one of the data pad things in the Institute. That was like a Gen 1. No, Gen 3. How would you describe it? Gen 3 version 1?
Early
maybe?
Gen 3 is what I
Like
would describe.
early Gen 3.
Very early. Prototype Gen 3.
That they didn't name those right.
No.
Because they had it backwards. It should be like version 3 Gen 1 instead of Gen 3 version 1 or whatever. But anyway, please continue.
Yes. But anyway, the directorate of the Institute, I don't know if this was before Father was director. It probably
implied
was.
it was.
It probably was. And he like lost his shit. He was like, "What are you doing? I didn't authorize this. You can't be testing this stuff with like the public. Like, what the hell are you doing?"
Yeah, in the game, it implied it was before Father
Yes.
because apparently, like his radiation-free DNA was the like hook that they needed to make like the perfect synth.
Yes. That's also, that's goes back to like how super mutants who were exposed to radiation as humans, when they have become super mutants, they lose their intelligence. It ties back into that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just like a really interesting scenario, and one of the like nails in the coffin for the Institute, and the Institute straight up killing all the delegates who tried to form like a pact in the Commonwealth.
Yeah, it certainly would have been a dicey subject if the Institute was trying to like have like a, I guess, like formal diplomatic relations with like all like the surface. But I I mean, because essentially like it was a spy that just got found out.
Yes.
That's the situation that happened.
But
So that's, I mean, regardless if that was a synth or not, that would have just very like, it would have reflected negatively upon whatever organization had sent that, I guess, spy into Diamond City.
yeah. So the point of this story was to just point out how the Institute also, many parts of the Institute also sees the Commonwealth as just a testing ground for their experiments.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
almost, I mean, like that's almost like all but explicitly said in the game, because you have to go to like different farms and said like to give them like test vegetables, I guess, right? Like the ones that grow like bigger.
That was the farm you were talking about before with like the husband that was replaced by
Oh,
Sin.
okay. So it's, God damn that. So that farm's having just a rough go of synthitude, institute like observance.
Yep. And like they just dumped the super mutants onto the surface, being like, well, we don't have any use for these guys, so we'll just let them run free.
Yeah.
Like the Commonwealth is just a dumping ground, a testing ground. All the lives of people above ground are just useless to them, aside from data.
So, I mean, I know like gameplay wise, it's not the case, but does that mean lore wise, there's only like a set number of super mutants in the Commonwealth?
I mean, I think that's what it means lore-wise. I'm not entirely sure
Huh.
what specifically is going on.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. It could be that they just also dumped vats of FEV up there for whatever reason. Hell, I don't know why the Institute does half the things they do.
I mean,
it
that
wouldn't
seems
surprise
like,
me.
It seems like that's something they would do just to get rid of it out of their own, just to get it out of their hair. That they would just like pour it out.
Yeah, put this in the river.
Yeah, it's like put it in some sort of water source. See what happens.
Yeah. Oh, we made the Mirelurks even bigger. Cool. Oh, we made the Deathclaws intelligent. That's also cool.
Well, no. There was a wasn't there a game where there was like talking Deathclaws?
Oh yeah,
like
in
furry ones
in
or something like that.
In Fallout 2, the Enclave captured Deathclaws and tried to see what FEV would do to them.
That's right.
And like if you inject a Deathclaw with FEV, it makes it
there's
intelligent.
also like Enclave Deathclaws with like collars and shit, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's right. That's right.
But yeah, I just wanted to present further evidence that the Institute is the worst fucking faction in the Commonwealth.
I couldn't agree more.
Yes. But that's all I have on the subject. Do you have any thoughts you want to continue on?
Time. No, not really, I guess.
All right.
Let's go.
All right. Then I guess that's been us. This has been Date Night at Power Noodles.
Goodbye, everyone.
See y'all.